Welcome to the Deep Bass Podcast, where we take a hard look at the element that makes or breaks games, the music. I'm Peter Thomas, and I'm joined by my co-host, Cody Haltom. We're happy to have you along with us on our journey through the last whole year of our podcast. What's going on, Cody?
I cannot believe we've been doing this a year, man. Can you?
I know. Every time I was prepping for this episode, all I kept thinking was there's a song that song. It's like, do you know what today is? It's our anniversary. It's our anniversary.
Shocking to no one. I don't know that song. So.
No, it's okay. It's an old one. I trollingly sing it to my wife every anniversary that we have, and she just rolls her eyes at me. So I just imagine that you probably did the same.
Yeah, I did. Don't worry.
We have a lot planned for this episode because we wanted to kind of recap before we get into the game. And I intentionally have not talked about the game yet because that's going to be a nice little surprise once we get there. But I have some questions and things like that I had put together that I wanted to go over, just basically talking about the episode as a whole, because I mean, a year is a big milestone for a podcast, really any endeavor. I was super thrilled when I made it through a year of streaming on Twitch. I was super thrilled when I made a year of streaming on Mixer. And now we're here doing a year of a podcast, and we did it a little more unorthodox. We did bi-weekly episodes as opposed to weekly like most shows do. But I think it fared pretty well.
There's no way we could do this show and do it well weekly. No soundtrack we get. It's, how shall I word that? We couldn't do each soundtrack justice, I'll say. Being able to listen to every soundtrack and listen to them multiple times, to really narrow it down. We put a lot more work into this show than what people realize. So, yeah, I'm really proud and happy that we've been able to make it a year. We've been on time, through sickness and all this other stuff that we go through, and we've always been punctual. So I'm really proud of us for what we've been able to do.
Yeah, I am too. And it's been an awesome journey. I've learned a lot of things along the way. I've never really done podcasting before, so there was a lot of new skills to pick up. But for the sake of sounding super cheesy and corny, rather, I'm happy I had to do it with you because, I know I give you shit through a lot of these different episodes along the way, and few times I've kicked you off the podcast, but all things considered, I think that it was incredibly valuable to do this alongside of somebody that I know, somebody that I trust, and somebody that I consider a good friend. So, I mean, I'm super grateful that you've kind of stuck by me through this, through my nitpicks and gripes and things like that. It's been an honor. So I really appreciate you.
No, thank you, man. I mean, when you asked me, I didn't take it lightly. I knew what you were asking, and I was like, all right, let's do it. I knew you wouldn't just ask anybody to do it. So I was deeply honored to be the one that you asked. Your eighth pick, but obviously we got
right.
Some good content at the end. But no, man, I wouldn't have had this any other day. Turns out we actually do good work, so that's great, and people seem to like it. And don't worry, anytime that you give me shit or I give you shit, we both know it's a brotherly love type situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right too. I didn't want to graze over one of the things you said. We put a lot of time, love, and labor into these episodes rather. And there have been times where lines have been botched, where we've literally re-recorded things. We do a lot of research, and while we may not know all the details all the time, as our Discord is happy to let us know, we do our best, and I think that really shines through. So I think our chemistry really helps this podcast grow, and I think that the love, care, and attention that we put into the podcast helps it as well.
Yeah, and that's what I want. The podcast that I listen to, I don't listen for what they're talking about. I listen because of the people I'm listening to. I feel like I know them, and I hope that people might have come for a couple of soundtracks that they know and that they like, and then they just keep listening because two friends having fun talking about video game music. I mean, that is the ultimate goal for me. So I hope one or two of you have been able to do that.
That's right. Come for the music, stay probably for the music, but maybe for us too.
Yeah, just a couple of idiots.
I do want to get into these questions, but before I do, I think there's a burning question that has been sitting on everybody's minds since the last episode. How the hell is Hades treating you?
Oh. I'm so glad that you asked, but I wish I had actually thought about it beforehand. I made it to biome 3.
Okay.
The lance is my go-to.
Yep.
I wish that there was a bit more of a tutorial. Not much. I understand why there's not one, because the premise of the game is that you're dying over and over, but like a little bit more structure where it's like, oh, wait, you got like when you beat Meg, you get the blood of the Titans, I think it is. And then you beat her again, same weapon, spear being my go-to, and you don't get it again. I didn't realize, you have to beat it with each of the weapons to get it every single time. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's one gripe. The mirror, I didn't know that you could switch out your stats kind of and choose what you were leveling up. That would have been good to know. And that one is actually probably said somewhere in the game, but I care nothing about the story, so I probably just skipped it. So it is enjoyable. It's been a while since we've talked and recorded an episode, so we've had some downtime, and it has been kind of my after work kind of go to, lay down on the sofa, pop on Twitch, and just pick it up and grind for a couple of hours. So yes, I am enjoying it. Am I going to beat it? Hell no, but I am enjoying it, and I don't regret spending that $30. How about that?
Yeah, no, that's good. I am happy to hear it. Obviously, I have a little more of an insider's peek because of Discord, and I've seen kind of the banter that you've been having with the other folks who have played. So, number one, I love whenever I can recommend a game to somebody and they do truly enjoy it. Sometimes I feel like I really hype stuff up and then they play it and they're a little disappointed. They're like, oh, it wasn't as good as you said, but it was good. So I'm glad to see that you are, enjoying it and wanting to play it kind of on your own. And you said that you won't beat it, but I mean, you're on the same biome that I am. And granted, that biome is really fucking hard, but you're not any further back than I am. So I have no doubt that you'll beat it, if not beat it before me.
I don't know, because here's the thing. I made it to the dude in the Minotaur, and
yeah, he's a prick, isn't he?
Just terrible. Such a pain in the ass. And the worst part about it is that I'm playing in handheld mode and I just want to throw the damn thing, which I'm like, don't do, resist the urge. And I'm not a rage type gamer, but it's just so hard. I haven't even gotten him down to probably a quarter of his health, either one of them, in any of my runs. But I did pick up on the tip that you had for me, the damage drop thing. I didn't like it that much. I did, but I didn't. I like the extra damage, but I tried to always time it perfectly. And everyone would always need like one more hit. And I'm like, shit, well, if I would have known that, I just would have hit him again really quick. But that's just me learning the game gripe and not a gripe about the boon itself.
Sure. Yeah, that's understandable. Well, it's good, man. I'm glad you're enjoying it. It's been fun kind of hearing your perspective on it as you go through. And I'm looking forward to the day when you say, hey, I finally did it. I got through it.
You're going to be waiting. You're absolutely going to be waiting, man. I'm not going to lie. Because, there's so many other games that I want to play. And we're on the cusp of E3 next week, which just seems nuts to me. I still wanted to do my platinum run of The Last of Us. I got a bunch of PlayStation Plus games I want to try out. So now that I have like a set schedule and a little bit of free time, I'm going to be enjoying games a bit more.
Well, that's good. I want to kick us off here and start with some questions about the podcast as a whole. So these questions are focused specifically on the episodes that we've done. And the first one I want to know is, what was your favorite episode that we did?
Hands down, it was The Last of Us. That's not because it's a me game. It helps, but the main thing about it, and I texted you about this when I went back and listened to the episode, is that I think early in this season, about the halfway mark, you and I really kind of hit our stride, but it is never more obvious than it is in the Last of Us episode. Our chemistry is just on point. The conversation is great. We're joking, we're cutting up. And it was really, really interesting to hear your take on it versus mine. Me as someone who loves that game, and you who have played it once, but that was really it. If I had to recommend one of our episodes to someone to listen to for the first time, hands down, it would be The Last of Us.
My answer was exactly the same for a lot of the same reasons. I think that if I were to summarize our podcast and tell somebody, listen to this episode before any of the others and tell me what you think of the premise, it would be the Last of Us episode. You'd probably be happy to know that since that episode to now, I've played through it again. Actually, it was my wife who went through it, and I sat with her and got to see it again. So I got a nice little refresher on that story. And I must admit, being a father, it is 10 times harder to play that game than it was the first time where I didn't have any children. It was even more emotional and heart-wrenching to watch. But yeah, that episode was just, I don't know, something about it. Maybe it was the air, maybe it was a full moon. I'm not sure, but we did really well. The edit came out really great. It flowed. It was one of the best episodes when I sat down. And the other piece of it is I don't keep tabs on the numbers too much. I usually take a peek a couple of times throughout the week just to see what people are liking and what people aren't. It was our best listened episode, hands down.
I know.
So it was phenomenal. Yeah, everything about that episode was great.
Yeah, I am really looking forward to doing the second one at some point just to see what those numbers are like. But yeah, I was super glad to hear, how well the numbers were doing. I always like hearing when the numbers are good. Why Pokemon followed that and did really well too is beyond me.
They were tricked. They were like, we're getting more of The Last of Us. Let's hear it. And then they got Pokemon.
Yeah, and then we just took a dump all over that game. You had texted me that, and I was like, "Wait, what? Like something is wrong here. This episode should not be that high." But I digress. It was. I won't ask questions. Thanks for listening. Is what I'm trying to say.
You're right. I think one of the things you said were people like what they like, and I'm like, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I mean that would check out. If you like your Pokemon, which plenty of people like their Pokemon, we heard about it all weekend that week. So
we sure did. All right. On the opposite side of that, what do you think was the worst episode we did?
The worst episode, I don't know if it's the worst one that we did, but it's the one that I probably enjoyed the least, which is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. As someone who doesn't listen to music, and we now know that's not a joke, I actually don't, having to listen to real music was hard, man. It was so hard. It was like the last thing I wanted to do. I would have enjoyed playing the game for sure, and experiencing it that way. But just sitting there and listening to those soundtracks and then trying to come up with, a top 5. Oh, what a grind that was for me. Quality wise, we were still early. So instead of being the polished turd that we are now, we were just still turd. But yeah, there are a couple of our episodes that I don't go back and listen to, and that is one of them for sure.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying there, because there was a specific level of challenge when you're trying to analyze and talk about music to a game. It's easier to talk about it when it's just the soundtrack because you can focus on the instruments and then the way it presents itself in the game. For Tony Hawk, it was like, yes, they picked all the music that you would expect somebody who is into skating would listen to. So uniformly it matched, but trying to analyze and talk about it, when I went back and listened to it, it was like, we do a lot of reminiscing and nostalgia talk, but we don't really talk about what it means for the game itself, because the tracks don't mean anything for the game. They're literally just there so you're not skating in an empty bowl, listening to the wheels
Literally.
on the pavement,
There's nothing wrong with doing that, just saying. But no, I mean, it was so hard. A lot of the games that we listen to, we've played, or at least one of us has, typically you. So we have memories kind of tied to it. What are you doing in Tony Hawk? You're just skating, and that's it. You can play that game without the soundtrack and it not add to anything, but because they are licensed tracks, you could hear it on the radio. So it made it less special versus an actual video game soundtrack. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's actually a good point. I didn't think about the fact that those tracks were definitely far more readily available. I mean, there was at least 3 or 4 I know that I listened to just normally because they were available like that. So you're probably right. It probably lost some of its magic not being specific to that game or something like that.
Yeah, probably. But thank God we're not doing any more of those.
As for me, what I thought was the worst episode, and it's probably a given, just given the fact that when I do projects like these, I'm very much a perfectionist. I want things to look and present as best as they possibly can. And at the time, this was truly the best that we could possibly present. But now, going back to it, I listen to it sometimes and I cringe because the quality was so poor, and I feel like I hadn't learned all the little neat tips and tricks along the way, like putting in little musical breaks in between the sections and just little things like that that make the music and the episode kind of blend together as a whole. But my worst episode, or what I think is the worst episode, is Final Fantasy X. It touches a little bit on what you were saying with Tony Hawk, that it was early and we still had a lot of learning to do and things like that. But Final Fantasy X is one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. And I feel like it didn't get the justice that it deserved. It was just not quite up to the standard that the podcast has slowly grown into. It makes me sad because now that it's done, it's most likely done. I don't foresee anything in the near future that'll let us go back and revisit it or anything like that. So I do feel like maybe, I don't know, who knows? If it goes on for 5 years, maybe we'll do like one recap episode where we take an old game and do it again. But yeah, it's sad to me that it's just going to be kind of left in the state that it's in, and it deserves better. And I'm sorry, Final Fantasy X. I love you.
No, I can get it. Going back to that episode now and listening to it, I cringe so hard, particularly at the start. But I will give you credit because I remember we put out that episode. I was at work and I was going home and I couldn't wait to listen to it. I was in my car in a drive through and we got to my number one, which was Xanarkand. And the way you edited that song into the edit brought tears to my eyes because it was like so well done. And that blew me away. It was right then where I was like, oh, we got an idea here. Like this is coming to life. This is actually working. And what's funny about that, and correct me if I'm wrong, because again, it was a year ago. Do you remember that after we recorded that episode, we still hadn't planned on putting musical tracks in our episodes?
You're right. I remember going back and forth with you and my wife because I wanted your perspective being the co-host and hers as like an outsider thinking about a podcast based on music. And I was like, there's a chance that if this were to ever grow to a point where it's noticed by big companies, we'll get grilled regardless of if it's truly licensed music or not. Nintendo, for example, is super stringent on all of their IPs, and they do not like their IPs being used in any fashion that they don't approve of. So I was like, man, do I want to deal with that? You know, I know it was ambitious because there's a chance that this podcast could have just been nothing forever. But I was just thinking ahead and I'm like, if for whatever reason this ends up being a thing, what am I going to do if somebody's like, oh, you know what? You can't use our music until you license it from us. And that's going to cost you money. I never wanted this to be something that I had to spend more money than the upfront of like a podcast cover and a couple other things here and there. I don't want it to gain money. I just want it to be. I just want people to listen and enjoy, and that's it. Not everybody understands and appreciates that love for the industry like we do. So it's like I got really nervous and I thought, yeah, I was just going to leave the music out and just be like, let's talk about it and try and explain it as best as we can and call it a day.
It never would have worked.
No,
Never.
no,
I
it wouldn't
remember
have.
I remember you texted me. We were all done and you're like, so the wife thinks that we should put the music in the episode. What do you think? And I was like, do you know how? And you were like, no. And I'm like, yeah, we should do it because it is a good idea. But I mean, I wasn't going to push for it because you were the one who does all the edits. And if you didn't know how to do something, I didn't want you to go outside your comfort zone. But I gave you my honest opinion on it, where it's like, yeah, I know like my family doesn't play games and I know that they're going to listen to this and they listen to every episode like clockwork. They need context for this. Otherwise, you're not going to have any clue what we're talking about. Shoot, I write down my notes so meticulously because I forget what these tracks sound like sometimes, and I just listened to them like a week ago. So I couldn't imagine for someone who had no context or anything like that. So shout out to her for making a brilliant decision that was way over our heads.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to mention, while I appreciate the compliment of how I put in To Xanarkand and saying that it was a good spot and everything like that, that it hit the right way. I could probably put To Xanarkand in this episode at any good breaking point and it would still sound good. So I give all the credit to the song itself and not so much to me, but I do appreciate the compliment. Thank you.
You humble sack of shit. Okay.
And our last one for this section is, what game surprised you the most when we did the episode? We sat down and we put it on, and maybe you weren't anticipating that it was going to be good and it ended up being good, but what really caught you off guard?
Celeste. Not so much the soundtrack whenever I first listened to it, but when I was doing my research on it and realizing how much they loved that game, I was blown away. It's not what I was expecting. I'm used to listening to Mario or Zelda or basically anything Nintendo. This goes deeper than that. I wasn't expecting that at all. It was on brand musically with what I wanted, except the tracks are way too long. But I understand and I get why they are as long as they are. But yeah, that one is one that really stuck out to me out of all the ones that we've listened to. I haven't listened to it since, but that was the one that was a pleasant surprise.
I came into Celeste knowing it a little bit, so I was already kind of anticipating that it was going to be good. But I will admit there was that one section in the Celeste episode where you had taken the time to do the research on the one song that is in reverse. And I remember not knowing that going in and being like, holy shit. It's like, this game is already really good. The message it's trying to send is really great. Everything about this game is good. But that just gave it that little extra to bump it over from being a great game to an impeccable game. I love when game devs do stuff like that and throw little Easter eggs, so to speak, that really kind of bring everything together. And that little find of yours, it's so small, right? It's just something you dug up along the way. And the next thing you know, it's one of the most monumental things for me in a soundtrack.
Yeah, it's us learning that we both agreed that the game was good, but that little detail made it great. That was like the cherry on top. That was my moment of, this is why it won Game of the Year. It's this level of love that it got. So yeah, that was an interesting journey to go on with that entire soundtrack. And I'm not going to lie, it took way too long to figure all that out. I'm not even going to tell you. But I want to know what you find most surprising, because I don't listen to video game music outside of this show. So because it is much more your cup of tea, what was it for you?
The Red Faction Gorilla episode. It probably comes as no surprise because that's not the type of game that I would typically play. I have dabbled a little bit. The guest on that episode was my good friend Duran, and when he and I were young and growing up together, he had these games. So I knew of them, but I was still not really in the place that I am now, where I really focus on soundtracks. Even before the podcast, it was just not really something that I noticed to that degree. when we talked about doing it, he had mentioned a few games that I was just like, oh God, I don't want to do any of these games. Sorry, Duran. But I didn't. They were just outside of my comfort zone. They were outside of my realm. One of them was licensed to shit. There was just a lot of different things that I wasn't sure would really land well, especially with what we had done up to that point. It just didn't fit in with the rest. But we sat down and we started listening to the soundtrack, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, wow, this has like a closet okay soundtrack. I kind of dig it. So I wasn't prepared for how good that was going to be. I wasn't prepared to have a lot to talk about. I thought it was just going to be like, I like this song because, it was pretty good. But the thing that really kind of got me was the fact that it ended up getting me to buy all 3 on Steam and start playing through them all.
I remember that, and I watched you play. We hung out. Duran was there too. I still don't like this soundtrack. That has not changed at all. I still don't know what drugs you guys were on when you listened to that, but I do know that you enjoyed it, and that's great. Just because it's not my cup of tea in terms of gameplay and soundtrack doesn't mean that I want other people to hate it or to have the same view as me. Like what you like, play what you play. I discovered Hades. You discovered Red Faction. We're learning things and our tastes are evolving throughout this show.
So our next section that we have are going to be a little more rapid fire for questions. You can give an answer. You can give like a one-liner or something to kind of justify said answer, but not spending a significant amount of time on these ones. But just wanted to get a little bit about the games themselves. The first question I have is, what game do you wish we had covered this season?
Halo 3 or 4. The initial idea was that we were going to cover Halo whenever Infinite was coming out, and well, it's still not out, so whoops. But the soundtrack there is just so good, and I really wanted your opinion on it.
I think mine was Mega Man 2, and the only reason I say that is because there's 2 pieces to it. One, it's argued to be the best soundtrack in all of Mega Man history. And 2, I had a buddy of mine, his name is Jason. He mentioned early when we started doing this that he expects to see that on here. And I'm sorry, Jason, we did not get it on this year, but hopefully for the next season, we'll have it on there. All right, Cody, what game do you hope to cover next season?
Oh, I got a list.
I know. I was not expecting like a full-on like laundry list.
It's not that long, but these are games that are, for the most part, more in my wheelhouse than they are yours. And again, I would just love to hear your takeaway on them. Obviously, we have Halo 3. Uncharted 4 is my favorite game, so there's that. The Last of Us Part 2, because duh. God of War 2018 specifically. A game from Fallout or the Elder Scrolls, Final Fantasy 15, Marvel's Spider-Man, which came out on PlayStation, and pretty much any third-party / multi-platform title I'm gung-ho to do.
If I can give light spoilers or teasers for the next season, I can tell you that in my mind, all but one of those, I definitely think we're going to hit. So you're going to have a good season next season.
Yay!
For me, it was anything that is not Nintendo. I obviously love Nintendo. I know you do too. And it's definitely kind of our bread and butter. And if I were to change anything about you as my co-host or me, it would have been that one of us was a little more eclectic in their home system, so to speak. I feel like you and I really hammered down on Nintendo a lot in this season. And I'm going to focus on making next season a lot less Nintendo-esque.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that.
All right, Cody, what is the best game that you played during this season?
Okay, for context, I haven't played a lot of games. I haven't had a lot of time. I only played Super Mario 3D All Star, Celeste, and Persona 5, and The Last of Us Part 2. That is my game of 2020. That was just an amazing game. So that is the best game I played this season.
There were so many good ones. I did a quick search to see what all came out between kind of the time frame of when we started this to today, and there were tons. As much as I want to say The Last of Us 2, because I have started it and am going through it currently. Actually, waifu is going through it. We're not finished with it. So I can't honestly put it on there, even though I know it's going to be so good. But if I had to pick one, it's got to be Animal Crossing New Horizons. That came out right at the start of COVID. So it was like the perfect time to have an Animal Crossing game. My wife and I put so many hours and effort into the island, growing it and making sure that everything was the way that we wanted it. It had to be it. I mean, it was inevitable. For as much time and hours that we put into that game, it couldn't have been anything else.
No, I get it. We talked about this when we did Animal Crossing, but yeah, I played it and I can understand why. I mean, that kept people sane for a large part of quarantine and that kind of thing.
I'm really excited to talk about this one because our answers are the same, more or less. But what
Yep.
was the most iconic moment for you throughout the first season?
Episode 5, the very start. Are we fighting dicks in this game? People don't know the context for that. So, what happened during the episode is we were talking about the palaces and that kind of thing. And I had a couple like quips and thoughts that I just wanted to talk to Peter about. And I was like, don't put this in the episode. But remember when I said this, and then we had a good chuckle for a good 2 minutes there. But of everything that got said, and I said, don't put it in the episode, I'm so glad that that little snippet got put in.
Yeah, I always knew that if there were any kind of outtakes or anything like that, I wanted to throw them in. And it's like when the episode starts with that right before the intro, it's just like it sets you up for what that episode is going to be about. And surprisingly, it's not about dicks the whole time. But one of the other iconic moments for me as the editor of these or producer or whatever you want to call me is whenever we started adding these section transitions. It was such a small change that I don't know why I didn't do it earlier, but it added so much to the overall seamlessness of the podcast. It felt less jarring between sections to have these little jingles or chimes or what have you. So it was such a small change, but I feel like it added a ton. Last question for this, and then we'll actually start the episode. What is the best thing that happened in your life during the season?
I'm going to try and keep this as light as possible. As you know, my year has been crap, absolute crap. I'll get into it a bit because I don't mind now because I am in a much better spot. But I mean, right when we started the show, I ended up losing a job that I had for 10 years due to COVID. I ended up cracking a rib over a hug, which is ridiculous. I ended up in 2 accidents. I put down here that the best thing that happened to me is that I didn't die because that head on collision was pretty bad and it was pretty painful. So I didn't die. And I'm also, for a while there, while we were doing this, I was working 2 jobs just to make ends meet. So working 2 jobs and podcasting takes a lot out of you. But fortunately, now I have a job that is better than the one I had for 10 years and also gives me a set schedule so that we can actually grind these out more efficiently. And I have a better work life balance than I have in probably the last 11 years. So it's something I'm deeply thankful for that. And obviously, because I've been going through so much, my family and I have gotten much closer together than we have been in the past, or at least recently, just due to the nature of my work and stuff. So small blessings. And that's my answer. I'm trying to be as light and as upbeat, but also as transparent as I can be. To say all that, I want to say thank you for bearing with me with my scheduling, having to record things at weird times, weird days of the week, and that kind of stuff. I know you knew and you understood what all I was going through, but no matter what, we were committed to this and we made it work. And here we are a year later. So thanks, bud.
Yeah, man. It's no problem on my end. Basically, if I were to summarize what your story was saying, it was we love you, Cody's parents, and fuck you, Lowe's.
Yep, that's it. That's exactly it.
No, it's actually really funny. In the notes, all it says is I didn't die. And I laughed at that at first because I was like, haha, that's funny. He didn't die, made it through another year. But then I was like, oh, wait, his year was rough. This actually is very true. I'm glad he didn't die too.
Yeah, like you put the question, what's the best thing to happen in your life? And I was like, I got nothing, man. I got nothing.
Yeah.
So I had to make a joke about it, but those are the main things. But that's the reason why is because I'm lucky to be here, honestly.
I mentioned it at the beginning of the episode, and your story alone should really be a testament to that. But Cody has faithfully put this podcast as a priority through all of that and was still there to be able to get the episodes done. So really, I should be thanking you. So I'm grateful for the effort and diligence that you put into the podcast.
Nah, this was job number 3 in terms of the order of which I kind of got them, but it was my main priority. Knocking things out. I'm a man of my word. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to be there. That's what I'm going to do. So yeah, right. Not a problem. Enough about me and my bullshit. What about you? Something that's much happier than my bullshit.
Yeah, fortunately, my year was a little bit better despite COVID and everything like that. I got to obviously see my son turn 1, which was phenomenal. Everything about having a child has been amazing. And it's all the things they tell you it's going to be, and then a lot of things that they don't. And so getting to see him grow in that short amount of time, I mean, even just in the last 6 months, it's like he is just a different kid every week. Sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. He has his moments, but it's always a joy knowing that, when I wake up in the mornings, he's there. He's as sweet as can be, gives me hugs and kisses every morning. It's the best way to wake up in the mornings, honestly. I think one of the coolest moments, and this actually just happened recently, was that I got to see my absolute best friend, somebody I consider a true brother, get married to the love of his life. And I traveled back up to Pittsburgh to go be with him. I was his best man. As much speaking as I do through streaming and the podcast and stuff, I was shaking like a leaf because I was like, oh my God, I hope they like this speech, because I wanted it to be heartfelt and sentimental while still kind of touching a little bit of humor along the way. Thankfully, I had a couple of people come up to me afterward and say you did a great job. So it made me feel a little better. But I mean, Cody, if you would have seen me, no joke, through the whole speech, I had it written on my phone and my hand was shaking so hard. I had to hold my hand with my other hand to see what I had written.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I am great with speaking when it comes to sitting behind a screen or behind a camera or something like that. Face-to-face public speaking is a terrible phobia of mine.
Yeah, I'm not great at it. I mean, I took public speaking in college, and I passed, and I put emphasis, I got by. It's never something that I've enjoyed at all, but there's something, obviously we're recording a show, but I mean, honestly, it's just you and I having a conversation. There's no direct feedback. When there is feedback, it typically comes a week later or sometimes, longer, depending on the scheduling of things. So that's when the Discord erupts and they all either love us or hate us. But no, I saw those pictures coming out of your trip and I was like, thank God he went home. I know that you guys needed that a lot because, I mean, your son, he just turned 1. He's turning 2 this fall. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
And I remember my niece and my nephew at that age. And I mean, you're right. They change so much. And I know that, extended family is missing out on that due to COVID and not being able to see people and that kind of stuff. So you said that you were getting out of Dodge for a little bit. And I was like, good for you, man. You deserve it.
Well, it's been fun reminiscing along the past season, and I'm excited to move into this episode, which is going to be kind of our capstone episode. And I say that bitterly because this was the longest soundtrack we have ever covered. I don't know why I decided to do this game. I mean, I know from an episode standpoint why it made sense to do this game, but I saw the soundtrack. I sent you a picture of the middle of while I was doing it. I had 10 or 12 songs opened up that I wanted to pick through, and I was only a little over halfway through it. It was brutal, but Why don't you do the honors? Let's hear what it is we're covering on this episode of Deep Base Podcast.
We are mildly reluctantly covering Super Smash Brothers Ultimate. More than 1,000 tracks, more than 30 hours straight of music, and that's not including vocal tracks. My only question for you, Peter, is how many times did you listen to this soundtrack in its entirety?
Once.
Did you really?
I did. I listened to this soundtrack one time in its entirety, and I should kind of put an asterisk and preface this to say that when I say I listened to the entire soundtrack, I mean like I got through a loop before, each of these tracks, they loop like 2 or 3 times. So I listened to a loop of the track and then I would move on to the next one. So yes, in its entirety once through the course of playing the game and things like that. I'm sure I've listened several other times, but no, never straight through like this. Never to this capacity where I'm just like, oh my God, I'm only at 684. There's 420 more to go.
I couldn't do it, man. I saw this on the list and I knew why, because it made sense. And this is a game that we can come back to every year, every season finale. We can do this again because there's just so much content here. So I'm like, all right, that makes sense. Some of these games are bigger and some of them are smaller that we might not have normally talked about. So I understood it and I supported it. But when I saw it, I was like, there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to listen to this whole thing. I might have listened to like 60 tracks in their entirety. Now, granted, going into this game, I already knew 2 tracks of that were going to be on my list. And then it was just a matter of remembering some of the others that I had memories with to pick out and sort through and then put on the list. But bravo, man, because I saw that list, that soundtrack in particular, and I said, nope, really quick, like,
it's an incredibly long soundtrack to listen to. And yeah, I don't fault you at all for not wanting to grind through all of them. I mean, a lot of them too were almost like throwaway songs. They were put on there and I'm sure that they might have meant something to some people, but they were like Japan only games that didn't really matter. Quick shout out to Thanos in the Discord for actually nailing it. There were a few people that were guessing and he got it on the first guess. I was like, damn. I was like, is it that predictable?
No. Here's the thing is that you fucked us, man. You put in that it was more than 1,000 tracks.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's what gives it away because I remember the announcement for Ultimate that at the start it was 800.
Yeah.
Then obviously DLC on top of that. That's what they were advertising. So as soon as you said that and I saw it, I was like, oh, people are going to know. They're going to guess this. Immediately, first guess, he got it. And I was like, no, I wanted it to be a surprise. But, well. Yeah. It's not too much of a surprise to anyone because, I mean, you're clipping on the episode title, I assume. So,
yeah, he got it. But there were a few other guesses there that they weren't even hitting the mark. It's weird because it's like they were saying games that were in it. Like I think Metal Gear Solid was referenced. And I'm like, well, kinda.
It's like we could have just said yes and we wouldn't have been lying.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about Ultimate. It's like, well, you're not wrong, but you're not 100% right. The one, I forget who said it, but someone assumed that we were going to be covering an entire console generation. And I was like, God, no.
Yeah.
I didn't tell them that, but I'm like, there's no way we could do that. We can barely do Ultimate.
Yeah, no, that will never happen. I pride myself on the fact that the show is focused on one particular game. It just so happens that this one particular game is a culmination of some 30 odd franchises or something like that. It's pretty incredible. Super Smash Brothers I felt like it was a great episode to kind of close out the season with because it is an all-in-one, all-encompassing episode now because it's got so much in it. It's a Nintendo-focused franchise, so obviously lots of Nintendo songs, but they did in later games start including third-party franchises to join in. I was a little surprised along the way because some of them didn't get kind of the Smash Brothers love that the other songs did. I know for a fact that Sonic the Hedgehog was almost a direct rip from the soundtrack itself.
Yeah, it pretty much was. I mean, I listened to a couple of those, but I mean, none of those were going to make my list anyway. Spoilers. One thing I remember you being, and I think you still are pissed to this day, the lack of love for Final Fantasy VII on this soundtrack.
Yeah, I was actually surprised when Cloud was there. He only got 2 tracks. After the DLC came and Sephiroth got added, they put in a few more. So I felt a little bit better about it. I was shocked to see that that wasn't the case. I mean, they introduced the hero from Dragon Quest, for example, and they've got, I think, 8 or 10 songs across 4 or 5 different games. And granted, yes, when you pick hero, you can switch his costume and it actually changes which hero you're playing from. So there's multiple games on there, but I don't know. I think I expected a little bit more from that side of things. I say spoiler as well, or light spoiler here, but honestly, we could probably cross out 10 franchises total and we'd still not even be close to touching our soundtracks. But a Final Fantasy song did not make my list, believe it or not.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that list of yours here in a second because, ooh, boy. Here's the thing about it is when I was going through, and we'll talk about this more probably when we get done with our list, but there were songs that I was like, all right, well, Peter's going to have this franchise. He's going to have that one. He's going to have that one. And none of those are here. Some of your picks I knew, but or at least franchise wise, but I'm shocked to see the absence of a couple. I'm not going to lie.
Good. I want to hear what they are when we get into them because I'm very curious. I felt like when I went through your list, it was pretty much what I was expecting. I think one song surprised me and the rest were like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's Cody pretty much to a T. But I do have a method to my madness as far as the songs that I picked and why I picked them. And I will openly admit that I feel like most of the ones that I picked were because I think that we won't do an episode on them. So I wanted to get their music in here.
See, and that's what I don't get because I was going to do something similar to that, but then I just said, no, I can't do that. My heart's telling me to do something different. We could do any game. I'm not opposed to doing anything except for anything Pokemon. That's done. But like any of the games that are covered in Smash Ultimate, I have zero problem doing. So don't let me hold us back. If you want to do something, let's talk about it. But that's the conversation for when we're not recording and we'll plan this thing out.
I know that we can really do anything, but I want the games to at least have some familiarity. And I feel like a couple of these ones, you know of the franchise name and like, that's it. I don't want that to be the case consistently. I know that there's some crossover between you and I, at least in the earlier years. But as we talked about, I forget what episode we did, but we talked about it. And once we hit like a certain year, you know, you branched off in one direction, I branched off in another, and that's just kind of where we were. So. All right, let's talk about the history, and then I want to hear about your memories with the game.
Okay.
Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is a 2018 crossover fighting game developed by Bandai Namco Studios and Sora Limited and published by Nintendo for the Nintendo Switch. It is the 5th installment in the Super Smash Bros. Series, succeeding Super Smash Bros. For Nintendo 3DS and Wii U, arguably the worst titles of any Smash Bros. Game. The game follows the series' traditional style of gameplay, controlling one of the various characters. Players must use differing attacks to weaken their opponents and knock them out of an arena. Ultimate features over 80 playable fighters from 38 different franchises, including everyone from all the previous Super Smash Bros. Games, alongside several newcomers. Like previous games in the series, Ultimate features several well-known video game music composers and arrangers, providing a mix of original music and rearrangements of various tracks for the represented franchises, with over 1,000 new tracks in total. New to Ultimate is the tying of tracks to franchises instead of individual stages, as well as the ability to create custom playlists to listen outside of the game when the Switch is in handheld mode. Sakurai stated that he began contacting composers over a year before the release, providing them with a database of over 1,000 suggested track ideas. In addition, he allowed them to submit their own personal favorites, with those choices being given priority for inclusion. While Sakurai oversaw the process and preferred that the music retain the spirit of the original games, the direction of them was generally handled by the composers themselves. The main theme, Lifelight, composed by Hideki Sakamoto, is the basis of most of the game's original music. And I have a link to the side because if you noticed, I did not give the list of composers like I normally do for games because the list is over 70 people.
I know.
I was just like, I'm not writing these down. I'm not going to say every single one of these. So just know that there are lists out there if you want to see all of the composers. I'm sorry to the composers who may stumble across this tiny little podcast in the corner of podcast world that I didn't shout you out specifically, but just know that we love you for doing what you've done because the music is fantastic.
Yeah, this was a doozy, man.
So tell me a bit about your history with the game.
All right, so I bought this game. I was going to, right? It's a first party big Nintendo tentpole. I'm going to get it. I'm going to play it. Went out. This is the reason why I bought a Pro controller. I hadn't had one up until this point, and I don't know how I managed to survive at all because that thing is life. I hate playing on the Joy-Cons when I don't have to. And you had decided that you were going to play this game on stream and you were going to play it with others. Now, I am bad at Smash Brothers. I always have been. I always will be. And I knew that. You and I have been friends for a while, but up until this point, we had never played a game together. You know, we had never spoken directly to each other. It's always just been like a DM or something. We didn't even have each other's numbers then. So you're like, just jump in. And I'm like, okay. So I do. I jump in the Discord. And there I am, just nervous as can be because everyone else is better than me. I can tell as I'm playing, I was being Bayonetta. I could tell everyone around me knew that I was new. It's kind of like when you let your little brother play, you got to be nice to them, you know, and let them have fun and not necessarily compete. Or at least that's what everyone did except for Peter, who unceremoniously completely murdered my ass with a one-shot move, not even 10 to 15 seconds into the first match. And from then on, I knew exactly the type of player Peter was. And that was my introduction to gaming with my buddy Peter. I think you were being Marth at that time, but I'm not sure. So it would have been a sword. So yeah, fuck you, Peter.
Is it the one that I have the highlight of?
Yep.
So I was playing Zelda actually in that one.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, I'll talk about that in a second. So first of all, I want to say that my siblings also did not like playing games with me because I show no mercy. It's like,
No, you don't.
Sometimes I'll pull it back a little bit. But the funny thing about that entire story is that that was one of the earliest times I started. And I thought I was good at that time, but I was only better than the people in the room until I started getting the randoms that would come by. These randoms ended up becoming good friends, and I'll talk about that as well. But yeah, I thought I was good, and I might have been better than like the average player, but I was not good. There was so much more I had to learn, and it really grew me as a player, opening up these arenas constantly, going through this. So even in the clip, I sorely apologize because it truly was an accident. I did not mean to do what I did. But yeah, in this clip, I was casting Zelda's fireball that travels across the screen. And I was actually aiming for Brian. He was being Ike, I think, and standing there charging up his attack. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to hit him with this. But I overshot the fireball. It went past him. And Cody was falling from another hit that he had gotten. And the fireball exploded at just the right time. And I remember seeing him just rocket into space. I'm like, oh my God. I couldn't have planned it ever to happen like that again. But man, I did not mean for that to happen. I'm so sorry, okay. Cody. that was brutal. That wasn't even meant for you. It's
Collateral damage.
Oh my God.
I know you didn't. And I mean, I tell the story like you're this ruthless guy or something like that. But I mean, that wasn't the case because immediately you're like, oh, I'm so sorry.
I couldn't believe it. I was just like, that was not meant for you, Cody. Whoops.
wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah, yeah. Part of the fun of Smash Brothers is that chaos and all of the disorganization. But for me, like most franchises that I enjoy playing greatly, Smash Brothers Ultimate was a day one buy for me. Each new iteration, I basically sit there during like E3 or reveals and I just scream at my monitor for every new character announcement because I'm always shocked. I'm always surprised to see some of the new people that they bring in. And I'm often left in either tears, chills, or both whenever I see them. But when I bought this game, I had actually just moved my stream from Twitch to Mixer and decided that it was going to be kind of like my full-time game. I was not going to play anything else on Mixer, just Smash Ultimate. And the arena made that really easy because I just threw my Mixer channel into the description. People would stop by, they play for a little bit, they'd leave, call it a day from there. Unfortunately, Nintendo's online services suck, so it often was very laggy at some points and things like that. But during that process, I met a lot of really great people that ended up becoming some really good friends of mine. They taught me from just being beaten over and over again how to be a better player. And
Mm.
it's just like one of those things where Duran did the same thing. You did something similar. I know Ashley had played for a little while and Brian played for a little while. And all you guys said the same thing. It's like, I can't play with these guys because they're so much better than me. And I kept saying, I was like, you guys need to keep playing. I promise you, you get better by getting beaten by them. And yeah, it's frustrating because you want to win and you just can't figure it out. But eventually, I mean, I just ended up growing. When I started getting to the point where I could beat these guys, it was like, holy cow. I thought I was good back then. And now I feel like I'm much better. It gave me the confidence to join in a few tournaments and try that out. It just really grew my love and appreciation for the game. But one of the most common things about Smash Brothers is that it is just great with friends. It doesn't matter who you're with. Back on the N64 days, all the way up to the Switch, there's never been any more fun than when I'm playing Smash Brothers with friends.
I don't know. I'd probably pick Halo more than Smash Brothers, but that's because I'm better at Halo, obviously. But you're right. There is something about getting with your friends on a sofa or online in this case, and just booting up Smash and just having fun, ordering a pizza. I think the one difference between the way you enjoy Smash and the way I enjoy Smash is I leave items on all the time just to make it 10 times more chaotic and also, less skill based. You can get a lucky strike in there somehow and randomly kill people. But no, I mean, Smash has been a staple for Nintendo since the 64, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
No, I don't think so. There's been a lot of questions on my end where I was like, a lot of these Switch titles, I feel like they've hit the pinnacle. It's like, how can they go further than Breath of the Wild? How can they go further than Smash Ultimate or even Super Mario Odyssey? These all feel like a culmination of years and years and years of development, practice, and now we have the perfect versions of each of these games. And I say perfect a little loosely because I know there are gripes within each game. But for the most part, as far as features go and the functionality of the game itself, it's like, where do you go from here? I felt like that strongly with Smash Brothers. I mean, you have a game that has all of the things that you need in it. It has every single character. It has tons of music. Where do you go from there?
I don't think you do. I think this is Smash in its final form. I know we are slated to get 2 more DLC characters that are yet to be announced. Hello, E3. It'll be announced probably by the time this episode goes up. But I don't think you do, man, especially with the name Ultimate. Why would you buy another Smash Brothers when you can have the Ultimate version or what they deem as being the Ultimate one? So I don't think that there is going to be another one. I think that in a couple of years, they're going to add a couple more DLC characters on. But I think Sakurai himself has been really clear that after this, he's done with it. And I could be wrong about that, but there's no reason for Nintendo not to just keep re-releasing this version. Now, granted, I do think that Nintendo is in its final form, to a degree with the Switch. I don't think we're going to see too much iteration on new consoles. I think it's going to be basically a beefed up version of the Switch now. But whenever those things come out, they're going to do like they did all the Wii U games, just re-release them, because what else can you do?
I know I've seen some interviews and I don't think Smash is done, but Sakurai has been very transparent to say that because he went so above and beyond, that you can almost expect that the next game, whatever that may be, will not be as comprehensive as this one is. So if you're living in a day and age where you have a Switch and are playing this, consider yourself at the pinnacle and prime of it. But I don't think that the next game will be bad per se. I just don't think it will be as all inclusive as this one. The other piece of that and why this one is the way it is that there was an interview that I saw where Sakurai was basically saying this was the last project that was assigned to him by Iwata before he passed away. Yeah. And he was like, I felt like I needed to do something to really honor him for this being his last request of me. So in that sense too, it's like, I get it. You wanted this to be something that really, I mean, Iwata is a god. You will not find anybody more passionate or more in love with what he does. I completely respect and understand that decision as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is on topic but off topic. But speaking of Iwata, have you heard of the book Ask Iwata?
I don't think so.
I highly recommend it. It's cheap and it's a small little book, and it's basically life advice from Iwata. It's just like quick little quotes of his. You know, it's nothing serious. It's not a big, thick book or anything like that, but highly recommend it. This being, you know, the big ask from Iwata, I can see him just, you know, out of respect wanting to go ham on this. And that they did. I think it's like 80 fighters, 30 some odd stages. I could be wrong. It's probably more, you know, and we've already talked about how long the soundtrack is. If you were going to honor a man and Nintendo literally be his legacy, this was a great way to do it.
I just bought the book.
Ah,
I couldn't let you show me up with the Hades thing and not return the favor, even though this is a little cheaper, but still.
Oh yeah, it's still it's so much smaller than I thought, because I, you know, just bought it on a whim because an influencer I saw had it, and I was like, whatever that book is, I want it. It's Iwata, so I went ahead and bought it. It's charming to say the least.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading it. Why don't we get started into our lists? We have some good ones here. I am pleased, I think, overall with our picks and am excited to dig into them. But you were saying earlier that you were surprised that a few franchises didn't make the list. So at the end of this, try and keep a reminder to yourself, because I want to hear which franchises you think were missed that I didn't grab, and maybe I can explain.
Okay. There's one in particular, at least off the top of my head, but I'll have to look at my notes.
Okay, cool. All right. With that, go ahead and start us off with your number 5.
My number 5 is the opening of Super Smash Brothers Melee, not Ultimate, Melee. I forget what episode it was, but we were talking about playing like a new system for the first time and looking at the graphics and going, whoa. I don't remember which episode that was, but do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, it was the N64 about Ocarina of Time.
Okay, there we go. I don't remember what I said, but I know it was wrong, because this is that moment for me. I had my GameCube, it was Christmas, and we had either rented Smash or I borrowed Smash from my buddy Will. I couldn't tell you which one, but I know I had it. It was nighttime, the windows were frosted. I mean, Christmas. I remember booting this up, and obviously I played the heck out of Smash Brothers 64. This was the first like 1-to-1. Everything else was pretty much a new IP. You didn't really know what to expect, but you could compare the 64 version of Smash to Melee. And I put the little disc on top of my black GameCube, closed it, and this amazing trailer starts. And I'm looking at this thing and I'm going, holy shit. because not only was this showcasing the graphics of the system, because this was like a launch title or launch window game for the GameCube, and it was showing so many different franchises, I'm like, that's what Zelda's going to look like. That's what Link's going to look like. That's what Donkey Kong's going to look like on this new system. And I was mesmerized by this thing. And all it does is just build hype. This is a get hype trailer like no other. I remember it ends, and the guy says Super Smash Brothers Melee in the way that the announcer voice kind of does. And just says down at the bottom, it's this little gray circle with the words spinning around it that just say press start. And the first thing I did was I hit reset so I could watch that trailer again. And I must have done that 10 times before I actually booted up the game to play it. Because of that, this is up to that point the most epic video game track that I had ever heard. It's so grand in nature and honestly beautiful. This song is Smash Brothers to me. Anytime I think about this series in general, this is the one track that always pops up in my head.
Really liked this song because when I listened to it, I could see that video. Much like you, I watched it so many times. So the build up and everything from the little Mario figurine falling onto the table and kind of coming to life to the Star Fox segment, all of that stuff. I can just see it all in my head when I hear this song. I was surprised when I saw this major list, not because the song itself is bad by any stretch, but with how many game soundtracks are on the list, the fact that any Super Smash Brothers original music made it was super shocking to me. So not a knock on the pick at all, just more like, oh, interesting. I wasn't expecting that. But with that being said, if you had to pick any of the opening tracks, this was a great one to pick. I also remember my first time that I turned this game on and got chills because of how vastly different and improved it was from the 64 version. The texturing looked better. Mario didn't have a pointy nose anymore. The speed of the game was tenfold better. I've always been a fan of the Super Smash Brothers series. I think the premise is great. It's a really solid fighting game that is easy for newbies to pick up and play with friends, but really hard to master. This intro just really makes me nostalgic about all the hours that I spent playing the heck out of this game till 3, 4, 5 in the morning, beating through the challenges and things like that. And this was on GameCube. That just to me is enough to blow me away. You've got this little console, this little mighty console that Nintendo was still in that phase. I mean, arguably still is in that phase of we don't have to make a console that's as powerful as PlayStation or Xbox. We're good with making a lighter console because we know we can put out games that are well worthy of being played. And this was the pinnacle of it. I mean, you cannot get much better than Smash Brothers Melee. With all that being said, you really can't go wrong with any of the intros. Each one of them are typically used in like the E3 trailers and things like that, and they always
Mhm.
bring hype. There's so much attention to detail with how they build out their intros that you cannot go wrong with them. And I would encourage really anyone to go and watch a trailer so that you can see how it's all put together.
Yeah, and like you said, because I almost made that note, like listening to it, you know exactly where or when each character shows up. Something that I want to point out, especially graphically about this was like extremely early internet, at least my exposure to it, and I'm sure yours as well to a degree. Like this was right before MySpace. Man, that's old. So I hadn't seen the E3 trailer. I had only seen like the pictures from EGM and Nintendo Power. So you look at the pictures and you're like, okay, yeah, it looks good. But to see it in motion is mind blowing. And the one thing I want to point out about this track and this video in particular is that these little shits, they knew what they were doing because right at the end of the track, there's that build up where it goes da 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 da, and then it just rests for a second and it just says in little bracket right there, it just says get ready. And then it's just this massive explosion. And I'm just like, you knew this was good. And I appreciate what you did with this, but damn, it didn't have to be that good. Shit. All right, but what is your number five?
My number five was a surprise to even me, kind of, but it was the athletic theme from Super Mario World. Never in a million years, with all of the music that's available in this soundtrack, did I ever think I'd put a Mario song on my list. And interestingly enough, it fought with the chill theme from Dr. Mario because I actually really love that song too. But it's no surprise that I'm not a huge fan of the Mario franchise. I tend to lean more towards the Zeldas, the Metroids, and really any other Nintendo franchise. The one exception is the Mario World games. I mentioned this back on episode 8 that I adore the athletic themes in the Mario franchise in general. They're much faster paced and fit well with how you should spend most of your time in Mario, running right as fast as possible. In this version, they've taken the faster paced song and sped it up even more. The banjo work in this is phenomenal, and they added these little taps of the drums as if you were on Yoshi, which does every song in Super Mario World justice. I admit, I've this fought hard with the castle theme and fortress boss from the same game because that song was equally as good, but alas, I could only pick one. Why did I think it was a good idea to have only 5 picks on this massive soundtrack? I kind of hate myself a little bit for it.
Dude, we could have had 20 tracks and this still would have been hard. Basically, what happened was Sakurai and his team went ahead and picked all number ones and was like, all right, now you pick Deep Pace. You know, what are the best of the best? And we're just like, you got to give us more time than this, man. Like, it's not going to work out.
Yeah, it's like, does all of them work? Can we say all of them are the best?
That's why I say, like, we can keep coming back to this as many times as we want. And there's always going to be like a new list. This is not the definitive list for either of us by any stretch of the imagination. This is just our list for right now. When it comes to your track, this track is Super Mario World to me. Mario World was my first Mario game. And anytime I hear this track, it takes me back to that time. I do like that they use banjo instead of piano. I don't know why I was expecting piano instead of banjo because listening back to it, it's dumb. Banjo is clearly the obvious choice, but it's always weird what they're going to do when they're upscale the soundtracks from being the MIDI chip to an actual orchestra. So I was nervous kind of going in, but they made the right choice.
I think the original MIDI chip tried to emulate a piano, so that's probably why you lean towards it. I think the OG song is piano-esque sounding. So, I mean, it's very ragtimey, so I can definitely hear why that would work. And honestly, it would have. But yeah, the banjo, I think, was such a better pick. If for nothing else, then we just don't hear a banjo enough.
Nope, not unless you're talking about Gustavo Santaolalla, then we're hearing it too much. I don't know why, but whenever I think of this track, I think of the Yoshi theme. Always. It's never the baseline athletic theme. It's always the little Yoshi added noises that it makes. And again, I don't know why, because I mean you're on Yoshi as often as you're not. But yeah, I mean it's a classic track and absolutely deserves to be part of Smash Brothers. All of these do, but yeah.
That little Yoshi bongo that they add in, or djembe, whatever it ends up being at the time, it really does. It's like it takes a great track and just makes it so much better.
Yeah, I'm not gonna complain. Also, Yoshi's just adorable as all hell. So
All right, Cody, what is your number 4?
my number 4 is opening slash menu from Metroid Prime. There are many games like Star Fox that take place in space, and their soundtracks do a good job of transporting you there. This track is different. This track is straight up alien. It's nothing but some techno synth slash keyboard and a little electric guitar, but it's absolutely perfect for Metroid Prime. I hear this and I'm instantly told that where I am is dangerous and unfamiliar. This track makes you feel uneasy yet more curious at the same time. Maybe I'm just being nostalgic because this is the only Metroid game I could ever get into, but I've always thought this track was a great song.
In the reaches of space, below the surface of planet Zebes, Samus Aran faced the space pirates. She destroyed their operation, wiped out the parasites called Metroids, and defeated Mother Brain. But the pirates were far from finished.
I'm really happy that a Metroid song got on here, even if it did have to be from a Prime game. I know.
Oh, what's against Prime?
I was going to say, I know that'll catch me a lot of shit because I know a lot of folks really do love the Prime games, but I really wasn't one of them. And it's not that they were bad games. I played through the first one and loved it, but it goes back to the style of games that I typically enjoy. I don't do well with first person shooters. And even though Nintendo gave me a lot of tools to make that aspect of it easier, like the lock on and things like that, I know I'm a huge fan of Metroid, but I should amend my statement and say that I love the 2D Metroid games more. I am curious why they put the creepy man in the beginning to talk about the premise to us of Metroid.
Yeah, that's the only thing I didn't like about it.
Yeah, but once he goes away, the song choice is outstanding. Much like my number 4, the kind of music you hear in Metroid isn't really found in any other games. And I really enjoy the franchise for that reason, where we talk about the synth causing issues with the songs and seeming almost out of place in The Last of Us. It's the exact opposite here. The howling that's in this adds so much more to the track and really showcases that space alien futuristic nature of this franchise.
Yeah, it gives it some real X-Files vibes, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And that's, I think, why I hated it so much in The Last of Us is because they weren't alien. They were post-apocalyptic, almost zombies. And I expect a different set of instruments for that. Guitar is obviously cool and everything like that, but adding weird wavy synths just doesn't jive with me. But for this game, throw it in, man, because it's really where it needs to be.
See, the synth in Last of Us doesn't necessarily stand out that much to me, but I do remember it vividly for Hades because of obvious reasons. But
Oh, sorry. I meant Hades. Not the
there we
last.
go.
Yeah,
There we go.
you're right. It was
I was
the
about to say, we
Hades.
both like that one.
Yeah, no. I'm sorry. It was my mistake. Too many episodes. I'm starting to lose track now.
It's only going to get worse, man. All right. What is your number 4? You teased us a bit, so go ahead.
My number 4 is Bloody Tears / Monster Dance from Castlevania. I don't know if and when we'll ever do a Castlevania episode on this podcast, but should we not, I wanted to take the time to put this on there. There's a host of reasons for that, and none of which are the fact that Bloody Tears is the best reoccurring song in the Castlevania franchise, which any fan of the series will tell you that between that and Vampire Killer, those are the two best tracks in the game. But no joke, it would be the aquatic ambiance of this series. The main reason I put this on here is because of the uniqueness of the Castlevania music in general. Due to its darker nature, there are a lot more instruments you'll hear in Castlevania that you just don't get anywhere else. Kind of like what I was talking about for the banjo. The big one in this series is the organ, and I feel like it really just doesn't work in any other game. Like the track before and one other track on my list, the track is sped up a bit to fit the nature of the Smash Brothers games, and we've added an electric guitar that really amplifies the epicness of this song. What's really funny is that I'm not all that familiar with Monster Dance, which is kind of the second half of the song, as I am with Bloody Tears. And while it is a good song, it's just not Bloody Tears. So you really are just listening to it for that.
This track is perfect for Super Smash Brothers, just in general. I didn't listen to any of the Castlevania songs whenever I was listening to some of the tracks for this. I had a feeling that you would pick one of these tracks, and I'm so glad that you did. You summed it up well because there's an epicness to this song that I love. I didn't think that there would be a song that included electric guitar that would tell me that I'm in a castle, but that organ really sells it to me. I know I've heard this song before, but actually listening to it made me appreciate how good it really is.
I was going to say, I hope you did. I think I said it as my arena song a few times.
Oh, you had to have, but was I paying attention? No. Because you got to think, at the time, I was in the Discord call, so I couldn't listen to the game audio.
Oh, that's
I had
right.
to play it on silent. And eventually I would be like, all right, it's my bedtime. I'm going to lurk. And I would hear it then. But even then, that's background noise to me. So I wasn't actively paying attention.
Right. All right, Cody, what is your number 3?
All right, this is the one that's going to get me shit, and I know it. My number 3 is Jump Up Superstar from Super Mario Galaxy. Super Mario Galaxy might be my favorite Mario game. It's basically Super Mario 64 on steroids and a true love letter to the franchise. Right in the middle of the game is the level New Donk City. The city is named after the original Donkey Kong arcade cabinet where we first meet our beloved Jumpman before he became Mario. This level has a festival literally dedicated to Jumpman, and it's one of the best moments in the game. During that moment, this is the song that plays. It's a wonderful swinging jazz track with lyrics that make tons of tongue-in-cheek references to the franchise. And I'll be honest, some of them are cringy at time, but it's a song about Mario, so what do you expect? You hear this once and it's stuck in your head for days, and you aren't even mad about it. While this is a good track all on its own, the fact that it's a celebration of Mario is what makes me put it on the list. If it wasn't for that arcade cabinet that came out in 1981, we wouldn't have Super Smash Bros. Ultimate today.
Here we go, off the rails. You know it's time to raise our sails. It's freedom like you never knew. 20 bags or a pass, say the word, I'll be there in a flash. You could say my hat is off to you. Oh, we can zoom all the way to the moon. Round this great wide wacky world. Jump with me, grab coins with me, oh yeah. Time to jump up in the air. Jump up, don't be scared. Jump up and your cares will soar away. And if the dark clouds don't just work, don't feel enchanted, 'cause I'll be your one-up girl. So let's all jump up super high, high up in the sky. There's no power up like dancing.
I really loved your notes for this because I played Super Mario Odyssey and did not catch that reference at all. That this,
Did you not?
I don't know. I have no idea. So the only thing I can attribute it to was the fact that I'm not a diehard Mario. Like, I've played Mario games here and there. My history of Mario in general is pretty spotty, but I've played some, I've skipped others and never really thought twice about it. The ones I missed, I'm just like, okay, I missed it. No big deal. When the Switch came out, I felt like I needed the next generation of Mario game. And I really was not disappointed. Super Mario Odyssey in general just did so much for the franchise that was different. And I really appreciated it kind of for what it was. Your description of this was pure perfection, though. Just going through what I felt going through it outside of the little nods here and there. So I didn't want to add too much to the actual description itself, but something I will note that after I had saw your notes and listened to the track, I noticed in the background, if you listen really carefully, you'll actually hear a few sound effects pulled directly from the original Donkey Kong game. Did you hear them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's a complete love letter. Did you make it to this section of the game?
Yeah, it's fairly early, is it not? I thought New Donk City was like the first world.
No, it's not the first. It's probably the fourth, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I beat Super Mario Odyssey, so I know I've seen it, but for some reason, I thought it was a lot earlier than that. I do remember this area very vividly. Pauline being the lead singer of this jazz-like big band was really heartwarming. And again, now all makes more sense to me. I knew her name was Pauline. I just did not liken her to the Pauline that you were saving in Donkey Kong.
Right.
And then seeing this stage take place in like this massive city that was probably a la New York City. But it makes you think that all that scaffolding that Jumpman was climbing all those years ago turned into this. This was hands down a love letter game. And I'm sad that I didn't know that while I was playing it, but I'm glad to know it now.
Yeah, it's great. And they give little nods to Donkey Kong as a whole as well, which that's not the reason why this made my list. I know I'm the Donkey Kong guy, but take that away from this. But if you actually boot up the game and you're in New Donk City, go look at the street signs because it's all the names of the animal companions from Donkey Kong Country.
I don't think I knew that either. Now I'm going to have to go back and look.
Yeah, you're welcome. But enough about my Mario/Donkey Kong love letter. Tell me about your number 3.
My number 3 is Conquest Ablaze, and it is from the Fire Emblem franchise. I would be remiss talking about Super Smash Bros. And not putting one of the tracks that a good friend of mine loves on here. Admittedly, I didn't know much about this specific song. I've always liked the Fire Emblem soundtracks, but I can't say that they really jumped out much at me, save for maybe the theme itself that was introduced back in Melee. And that was because I'm a big Marth guy. When I started streaming Smash full-time over on Mixer, I had a host of new friends come by and play nightly, and T was one of those people. She had a Fire Emblem stage set as her default, and this song was the default song that played with it. And after a while, I grew to really love hearing it so much, to the point where I can't hear this song without thinking of her and her exceptional Robin/Reflay skills. I would urge anyone listening to this who plays Smash Brothers to send her a challenge and watch how she moves. I learned a whole hell of a lot from her and the other friends who played Fire Emblem characters, which are generally my go-to picks, and I'll forever be grateful to them and wanted to honor them with this pick.
Smash has like 20 characters from this series, so it's really fitting to have this on your list. I'm just saying. I miss T. She was an amazing Smash player. I remember being excited when she would show up. She never joined the Discord with us, but she would always like be in chat after each match. And she always was like, man, I could have played so much better. I'm just like, dude, shut up. You are owning everybody. But I mean, she was so humble about playing and didn't mind teaching, or going easy on me on occasion, not often. Having said all that, I don't remember this track at all. I do like the bass in it though, or not the bass, but what is it? It's the brass that's in it. Because I haven't played any of the Fire Emblem games, this track reminds me of Final Fantasy 13, and I don't know why. And it turns out pretty much all of these songs that we've picked are basically perfect for Smash. I don't know why I have that note down for every song, but there it is.
It's okay, man. They're all perfect for Smash, and that's why they're in Smash. But I do have a funny story to share really quickly about a particular session of Smash Brothers that we were playing. There was a guy who came in. He was a Luigi main, and we were doing one-on-ones at the time. He was a really good Luigi, like just absolutely shitting on us left and right. And he was going through the list over and over and over again. And T was in the chat, but she wasn't in the arena. She had some other stuff to do and things like that. She saw us just all getting our ass kicked by this guy. And she's like, you know what? I'm going to come in and try it out. She gets in the queue and she's like fourth in line or something. This dude continues to shit on us over and over again. And then T's match gets up. And I know you know where this is going, but it was so epic to see that I saved the highlight and I have it somewhere. I just got to get it uploaded at some point. But yeah, they ended up going in a bout, and it wasn't like a dominating bout. Like, he still put up a really good fight, but she was the first one to be able to beat this Luigi. And shout out to that Luigi, because you really did kick ass. But bigger shout out to T for finally dethroning this king of Luigi's from the game.
She's like, hold on.
Yeah.
You're not going to walk all over
She's
my
like,
friends.
hold my tea.
Yeah. Those were fun times, man.
I know. I miss them so much.
Yeah, me too. Rip Mixer.
All right, Cody, what is your number 2?
My number 2 is the Great Sea / menu select from The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. In Wind Waker, the traditional Hyrule Field, quote unquote, hub world has been replaced by the Great Sea. As a result, the music needed an upgrade as well. People complained about sailing and found it boring, which is so weird to me. There's tons of treasure to pull up and there's tons of islands to explore, so I don't really get that argument. The game has a warp or fast travel, and that is the way that a lot of people use to get around, but not me. I would sail to each location no matter how far away it may be. It wasn't because I found it entertaining, though. I did it because it gave me a chance to listen to this amazing track. The lighter notes and the muted trumpet make you feel the wind in your hair as you are sailing through the Great Sea. This is my favorite Zelda Overworld area theme by far. This is my favorite Zelda track in Smash Bros. Ultimate. I can't wait to cover Wind Waker one day.
Soon, TM, we will cover it.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention this, but in your number 4, they had the opening / menu theme for Metroid Prime. I think I was thinking to myself, I was a little confused as to why they tied the two of them together, because I felt like they weren't needing to be mixed. But then I was like, oh, they only did like this little short segment of opening with the creepy man, and then they did the whole menu song. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. In this, they tie the menu song in with the Great Sea way later. It's more of like a half and half kind of split. In Zelda, you don't realize how much those two go together until you listen to them mixed up like that. I thought the transition was smooth. I thought that it made sense. Like it was a very wholesome transition. It didn't sound like it was abrupt or anything. So really appreciated that. I should have guessed you would throw a Wind Waker track on here. For as much love as you've talked about having for this game and everything like that, I guess I just wasn't expecting it because, again, the list is humongous and how could I have possibly guessed 5 out of 1,000? But super happy to see a Wind Waker track and specifically the Great Sea because I really enjoyed it. I thought that the song really screams adventure and discovery, especially in the context of that game. But even in this game, there's a stage that takes place on, his name's Red something, right?
King of the Red Lions?
King of the Red Lions. Thank you. The stage takes place on that boat for the majority of it. And every now and again kind of crash lands on a rock and will take place a little bit on there. So I think that throwing this track on the game without that stage would have been fine. But having that stage on there just adds to that feeling that you had when you played Wind Waker. I was part of the camp that thought that sailing was really tedious. That got rectified with the HD remake when they had the Swift Sail because it made traveling a lot better. But it was a long time to travel from like one end of the map to the other. Comparing to the games that they had before, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, you could travel from one end of the open world part of the maps to the other without it being too long. But this was the first time that they ever opened this up to like an open world type feeling. I think a lot of that lended to the fact that it felt like it took ages. I mentioned this before. The addition of the menu music was a treat and very much welcome here. I didn't put Zelda on my track list, but Midna's Lament and Cass's theme were very, very close. But I was happy to see one made your list.
Yeah. Now, a note about my tracks I do want to make is that obviously this is a remix of the original. As good as the menu select is in this track, if I had to pick between this track and the original, The Great Sea is the better of the two tracks to me. I love that song. And I understand like where you're coming from, where, it's tedious, it's time consuming, to travel the traditional way. And you're right, it is, but it gave me a chance to listen to this song. And that's the only reason why I would do it, is because I enjoyed the song so much. Did I still find it annoying? Yes, but the music made it worthwhile to do. It's not that I would never do it. It was just a rare thing.
Yeah, I get that for sure.
All right, buddy. What is your number 2?
Oh, man, I'm so excited about my number 2 because this is another game that I feel like we may never cover. It makes me sad, but I'm glad that we're getting a chance to put this on here because it was hard to put this as my number 2. I couldn't in my right mind do so because, you see what my number 1 is, and there's obviously a reason that is there. But this song is from Earthbound. I talked to you one time, a few episodes back, about what your island game would be. What game would you pick if you couldn't pick any other game at all to be trapped on an island with? And Earthbound is it. It's my favorite game of all time. I love it to bits. And the song that came from Smash Brothers was the Onett theme / Winters theme. The thing that's even better is that for Smash Ultimate, they added this song. So it's never been in any of the other Smash games, even though Ness has been a part of Smash Brothers since the original. And it has 2 of the better town themes, in my opinion, mashed into one. If you heard these 2 tracks alone, you'd never picture the 2 of them together, but they've blended them so well. For the Onett theme, they greet you with a teaser of the original from the SNES, but then it picks up into this very peppy version that absolutely crushes it with the brass instruments. After about a minute or so, it fades out and goes into like the more ethereal, dreamlike Winters theme. Aside from using the real instruments, they don't deviate too much from the OG song as far as the way that they're presented. So they're not rearranged in some crazy way. But it's so fine for this soundtrack because these songs are just gorgeous on their own.
I can tell that this was 2 tracks, but I don't mind because they are blended so well. I think the peppy part of the track is the On It theme, and it's such a light and upbeat track that it's a great track to kill your friends to. It really fits into the game well. The Winter's theme is the exact opposite to that, but not in a bad way. It's a really beautiful, relaxing part of the track. I'm glad that these two got blended together because otherwise I wouldn't have heard it. I know I haven't played much of Earthbound, but that is a distinct soundtrack. Like you can hear a track from it and just know it's from that game. I don't know why that is, but if you hadn't have told me that this was Earthbound, I would have listened to it and been like, "Does that go to Earthbound?" You'd be like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "Thought so."
I didn't notice it until just now when you mentioned it, but I realized that the songs that I picked are tracks that are distinctly their games. Like if you listen to mine blindly and had at least just the vaguest of familiarity with the franchises, you would know where they came from because of how distinct they are. And I didn't notice that until just now. We're here at your number 1, and I'm very excited about it. Let's hear it.
I didn't want to put this on my list. I, honest to God, didn't. It's Gangplank Galleon from Donkey Kong Country. I put it's Gangplank Galleon Ultimate because the tracks are different. We've covered this series 3 times this year, so I was really, really against putting it on my list. This song was my number 3 way back when we covered Donkey Kong Country on episode 2. When I was listening to that soundtrack, I wish that it was this version of this song. This is the best remix of this song, period. The main thing that drew me to the original track was the killer electric guitar. That guitar is nowhere to be found in this track. They replace it with trumpet, and oh my God, is it so good. They sped up the track some and added some scat to it as well, and that's just the icing on the cake. But my favorite part about this track is towards the end when they drop in a random cut time section that breaks this track the fuck down. That section is just way too short because it's so damn good. When they announced King K. Rool for Smash Ultimate, I watched that trailer over and over again just to listen to this track. Of the 2 tracks that I thought about putting on the list, and ultimately I did put this one on here, this was one of them.
I was right there with you when they announced K. Rool. I admittedly was hoping that it was going to be Banjo, and they ended up using almost the exact same footage when Banjo got announced, which was really funny. When K. Rool came hurtling on, I was like, man, I can't believe that he's going to make it. This was like the year of bosses, man. So many. We got K. Rool. We ended up with Ridley, and we got Sephiroth. It's like all the big bosses are coming along.
Ridley's the one that I still go, really? Okay.
You know, he was one of the most requested characters.
Bullshit, really?
No, it was Sakurai was saying like so many people after having Samus on for so long wanted Ridley there as well, but he didn't know how to size Ridley properly to fit for the game without losing his impact as being Ridley, you know?
That works.
Yeah. You know, I said about this song that I'm pretty sure that you could listen to this podcast with a major hearing impairment and would have still known that this was going on your list somewhere. Not necessarily number one, but still just there was going to be a Donkey Kong song on here. We just know it. I couldn't agree more though about the horns making the song so much better, because if you take out an electric guitar for a song like this, it's got to be something equally as good or better. And I think that they did a great job with nailing it. But I think the general consensus is that if you speed up a track in any form for Smash Brothers, then it's going to end up having some amazing results. And they did just that with this one too. What blows my mind is how much the vocals add to this song. They're riddled throughout and mostly nonsensical, but man, I have no idea how they pulled it off. But once again, taking a good song and making it that much better.
Yeah, I don't know how. Like, it shouldn't be this good, but it is. And, you know, like I said, I didn't want to go back to Donkey Kong Country, but when I think about this soundtrack, the Smash Brothers Ultimate soundtrack in particular, I would listen to this song more than any other, which, you know, isn't saying much considering there's more than 1,000, but it does say something to the quality of the music. It just was completely out of left field whenever I first heard it. And then I realized, oh, wait, it's pretty much an original to the Ultimate soundtrack. So in the months leading up to Ultimate coming out, I just had to watch that trailer over and over again. And something I wanted to point out, it's a story I had, because you brought up how when they announced Banjo, they basically reused the same trailer, right? I remember watching that Nintendo Direct when they announced that, and I was flipping the hell out to get Banjo. So much so that I immediately closed the video to text you about it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? We got Banjo, the one character that I've always wanted in Smash Brothers. And then you were like, wait, what did you think about Breath of the Wild 2? And I was like, fuck, there's a Breath of the Wild 2? Because I thought it couldn't get more hype than announcing Banjo in Smash. You know, they always have that one more thing. And I thought that Banjo being announced was that one more thing. And to this day, I have not bought the Banjo DLC.
Yeah, that was a big announcement that came out. That was full of huge things.
Yeah. I forget what else. All I know is that it was Banjo and Breath of the Wild 2. And hopefully we'll hear more about Breath of the Wild 2, even though I don't plan on picking it up. But I'm curious as to what direction they're going with it.
Yeah, me too.
All right, buddy, tell me your number one.
It is from Donkey Kong Country, which I had to laugh so hard at the fact that we both had Donkey Kong as our number ones.
I woke up this morning and I saw your list and I just texted you in all caps, lol.
Yeah, but my song is Sticker Brush Symphony. I said in the DKC2 episode that this might be one of the greatest songs of all time, and maybe, just maybe, second to Aquatic Ambiance. But as it stands, Aquatic isn't on the soundtrack, and this one is. What we have here, though, is a beautiful track that is made even more beautiful somehow. When we originally heard this on Super Smash Bros. Brawl, it was to a DK stage that had a waterfall on it. Tempo-wise, the song doesn't change much, but moving from the MIDI-style sound chip to a full orchestra absolutely does the song justice. I fell in love with it all over again, and it continues and remains being one of my favorite songs of all time. There is never a bad time to listen to the song, period.
I love this song. You know I do. I mean, it was both of our number ones on episode 12. This track has a very different sound to it compared to the original. I'm not going to lie, I do like the original better, but I think that's just my nostalgia talking. The problem is that the original doesn't work for Smash at all, but this one does. There's just something about the rhythm about this version that makes it so distinct and good. I would have never expected a remix of this track to include violin and guitar, but here we are. It completely changes the tone of this track, and it's so unique. I personally never would have tried it, but I'll be damned if it doesn't work well.
Man, those strings, they hit so hard.
They do, and it changes the track so completely. Like, I love both the tracks, and I do, if I'm going to pick a version to listen to, I'm going to pick the original because I think there's something that the MIDI chip actually adds to that version of the track that makes it feel emptier or more lonely, but not in a bad way, you know, that just changes that track. This is a more full, more dense sound to it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think they had to make it that way to be able to be a song used for a fighting game, whereas the other one's meant for a platformer that sometimes you don't have your ally with you, and it is a lonely experience.
Yeah, and that's what I mean is like Smash Ultimate and Donkey Kong Country 2 are completely opposite games, you know, on very different systems. And so I get and I understand why, and that doesn't take away from the track. I'm just shocked at how good it is given the changes that they committed to.
All right, Cody, we have made it through painfully because that was the hardest list I think I've ever had to come up with.
Dude, not gonna lie, I got done with mine and I was sweating.
Yeah.
Like I'm just sitting there like, this is overwhelming.
I know. I almost regretted a few of my picks. It was just like there was no winning. Anything I put on, I was like, well, now I don't have this on there. And it was a back and forth for me for at least a few hours while I figured it out because it was tough.
Yeah, I got done with mine and I put it in there. And then I saw yours and I was thinking about the soundtrack and I was like, there's so many tracks that I completely forgot about. You know, let alone Joker is in Smash. We had most of, or not most, those are long as hell soundtracks, but we had so many gems for Persona. And I thought about that and I was like, God, I should have put Persona on my list. But I have this thing, once it's in here, it's done. I'm locked in, no regrets. But yeah, dude, this was difficult to say the least.
Yeah. You think Smash Brothers is something that you'll go back to at some point?
I don't know. I mean, fighting games aren't really for me, not really in my wheelhouse. If you were like, hey, do you want to chill in Discord and play a couple rounds? I'd be like, yeah, sure. But is it something that I'm going to actively go out and do? No. Like, here's the funny thing. I can't beat the damn game. I tried because, the spirit board is what it is and that kind of thing. I did the last panel of the spirit board wrong, and it won't let me go back and get the good ending unless I completely restart the World of Light. So I'm writing that off completely. And then I think there's only 7 fighters I have to beat classic mode with, and I'm done with it. And I did go through and beat it with a couple more. That's how I know I have like 7 left. But no, this isn't something that I plan on. It's a Nintendo tentpole. They put another one of these out. Yeah, I'm going to buy it. I'm going to play it for a bit, and then I'm going to collect it. Because that's my experience with this game.
Right. I mentioned this earlier about this kind of being the all-in-one Smash Brothers game that you need, and putting this on to kind of end cap this first season of the podcast. It just kind of went hand in hand. I'm like, this has so many songs on it and so many things that we could pick from that it really kind of stretched a little bit of our musical tastes and what we would want to share to the other folks that are listening.
Yeah, at one point, Street Fighter was going to make my list because I'm like, there's no way in hell we'll ever get around to covering Street Fighter. That game heavily influenced this one, obviously. So it was a struggle between what should I put on the list versus what am I going to put on the list.
Right. That's funny. Actually, Street Fighter almost made mine too. I'm telling you, there's so many franchises that almost made it on here. I had a hard time. I had such a hard time. And I argued with myself and thought about adding 5 more and just saying like, let's do a top 10 this time around. But we're already almost at 2 hours and 30 minutes at this point. I was like, we better wrap it up here.
The one thing before we do wrap it up, you want to know what franchises / songs that I thought you were going to go with?
Yes, I do.
Mute City and Big Blue from F-Zero.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Big Blue almost made it too.
Yeah, they both were on my short list, but I'm like, I know Peter's going to pick it, so I didn't. I almost picked Corneria at one point just because it's a better version of Corneria. Other than that, I had you pegged on Earthbound and Castlevania. Mario World is the one that shocked me, and obviously Donkey Kong. But really, it was F-Zero was the one where I was like, you had to pick it. But no, you didn't. It's okay.
Yeah, for me, it was, I knew Donkey Kong was going to be on yours. And the one I was surprised was Star Fox.
You're like, I knew Donkey Kong was going on there. And I truly didn't, because I really didn't want to, because I didn't want season 1 to be the season of Donkey Kong. But
you're the Kong.
I know. And I am glad that we covered all 3. And, and that was a decision that we came to together. And it was a real interesting idea. But I want us to be more than that. So I'm excited for next season. We have a roadmap. We know what we want to do with it. So I'm excited to dig into it and branch out a bit. But will I still always and forever make reference to aquatic ambiance? You damn straight I am.
That's never going away.
Oh, God, no. And with good reason.
We do have a question of the episode. This one, Cody and I don't have to answer because we've already answered this particular question, but we want to know, are you better or worse than the friends you play with? Because I already know I'm better than Cody. No, I'm just kidding.
Bitch, motherfucker.
I'm just kidding.
I know it's like after 11 o'clock, but boot smash up right now. Let's go.
No, I'm just trolling you. The real question of the episode is, we want you to participate in the episode this time around. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to ask this question, and whatever answers we do get, we'll bring them into season 2. We'll tell you guys what y'all picked and talk about them just a little bit and whatnot. So the question of the episode is going to be, what are your top 5 songs from Smash Brothers Ultimate? Since the soundtrack is massive, we obviously could not cover all the ones that we wanted to talk about, and even the ones we didn't want to talk about. So we'd love to hear what you have. So give us your top 5, and maybe we'll chat about it a little bit come the start of season 2.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the few questions that I actually came up with. If you guys enjoyed the show and you want to kind of get a look as to how hard it is kind of for us cut this soundtrack down to only 5 because it's hard and everyone has their own unique tastes. And so I'm really excited to see what people pick and what people pull away, because a large portion of the time when Peter and I are doing this, it's always our memories. I know the exact track that was playing when Peter murdered me, but I didn't put it on my list. Not for that reason, but I do remember what it was. So I'm interested to see what you guys pick, what you guys pull up. Let's extend the deep base to having you guys talk to us a bit about this and just tell us what your lists are.
Yeah, definitely. And if you want to answer this question, you can do so or talk about the episode with us in general, right on Twitter at Deep Base Podcast, or you can stop by our Discord channel where everybody loves Cody more than they love me. And
Not
that's
anymore.
Yeah. And that's over at discord.deepbasepodcast.com. Normally, I would wrap up completely here, but I do have some Nintendo-esque announcements right at the end.
Are you telling me we got one more thing?
One more thing. This one's going to be pretty short, but it is some things I'm very excited about. So just as a forewarning, there is going to be a little bit of a break between season 1 and season 2. So don't be alarmed if in 2 weeks you do not see the first episode of season 2. I need some time to prepare. I want to get some of the episodes ironed out and put in place so that we know where we're heading, at least the first 5 or so. And I want to revamp the intro song as much as I love it and have grown fond. I can't remember if I mentioned it on the podcast or off with you, Cody, alone, but I feel like the intro song right now is very fitting for me and what I like. But now that I've gotten 26 episodes of the kind of music and songs that you like, I feel like I can encompass that a little bit more and get something that's more us as opposed to just more me. As for another announcement that I have that's probably a little more exciting, I finally decided that we at the Deep Base Podcast are going to deliver some merchandise.
Yay.
So I reached out to a few artists and I got some really cool works done that I'm going to get thrown on some t-shirts. There's going to be 2 of them, 2 designs to pick from. One of them is going to be a super limited edition design. It'll only be available for like a week or so. It is basically Cody and I in front of a Deep Base Podcast logo that's kind of stylized in like a Final Fantasy format. It's really badass looking. I love it. The artist who did it did a great job with it, and I'm super excited, but it'll only be available for a limited time. So make sure if you want to grab one, you scoop that one up first. The other one will be available all times. It'll start being in the link below the description. And it is us as Animal Crossing characters with the Deep Base Podcast logo and everything like that around. Both of them are great looking. You'll be happy with either shirt. Like I said, one of them will just be for a limited time only. The other one will be around all the time. So feel free to pick those up if you want to support the podcast a little bit more and show your love. We would love for you to pick them up, take pictures in them, and share them with us. You can do the same thing. Shoot them over to us on Twitter if you're comfortable enough doing that, or drop by the Discord and let us see your pictures of them. But super duper excited about the shirts. I can't wait for you guys to see them. They're not up in the shops as of recording this, but by the time this launches, they will be available.
Yeah. In the limited edition one, I'm just going to say, I look good, dude.
Yeah. You
really
killed it, man. I had to ninja a photo of you. That's probably something I should note is that the limited edition one is limited edition because it does contain our real pictures in them. So you'll actually see what we look like if you haven't already. And the one that'll be available all the time, we're stylized in more of an Animal Crossing style, so you can't really tell. But yeah, I had to ninja a picture of you, I think, off of Facebook.
God, and I don't even use Facebook anymore. But I mean, it was on my Instagram too. You could have gotten it there. But yeah, it's kind of weird because my profile picture for everything is me playing pinball. So I'm looking away from the camera. I mean, you can do some digging and figure out what I look like. It's not too hard, but yeah, that's my ugly mug for all you guys to see.
So very excited and looking forward to it. Again, no obligations. If you don't feel like grabbing one, no hard feelings or anything like that, but just wanted to let y'all know that they would be available. And of course, all the sales to that just go back into the podcast. I think that's it. We just want to thank you guys again for a great year of a podcast that started off as just kind of an idea and one we didn't think would be anything anybody was interested in. And we're really happy to have been on this journey, both together and with y'all as we celebrate 1 year of the Deep Base podcast.
Yeah, as much work as it is, it's the most rewarding thing, especially now that we have the Discord, whether I'm loved or hated, currently hated, but we'll see. It's to see your guys' reactions to the new episodes whenever I let you know what we're covering next, or just discussion on the games in general, and you're getting your feedback. It's the best part of doing it, and it's so rewarding. And it's one of the reasons why I look forward to doing another episode. And I knew that when we covered this one, you guys are going to have some thoughts, which I can't wait to hear. But honestly, just thank you for letting us be part of your lives.
Yes, for invading your living rooms, your radios, your ears with all of our thoughts and opinions. Thank you guys so much from the bottom of both of our hearts. We were happy to do this season and can't wait to see you next season. But with that, we are out of here. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Hey everyone, Peter here. I wanted to leave you with one more little gift before we closed out the season. Earlier in the podcast, I mentioned that T was one of the biggest supporters of my Smash streams, and she was also one of the best players I have ever had the honor of seeing play. As you watch the stream, you earn currency that can be redeemed for a custom rap written by yours truly. Well, T chose that reward, and what you're about to hear now is a result of that redemption. I hope you enjoy it for the little bit of silliness that it is, and we'll see you next season. Okay, this is for T for claiming her 5,000 points. We ready? Last time I wasn't really ready. This time I'ma hold the mic steady. Flow number 2, gonna show you what I'm out here made to do in front of you. I may not get first in Smash, may stop by and see I'm trash, but my lyrics hit fast like Jimmy John's delivery, paid all up in cash. Hard tip, short grip on the falchion, all about that edge guard that I be on. I can't spike anyone worth a damn, but I'm out here showing them all my master plan. Dodge, roll into grab, that's hard. Low percent won't get you too far. Watch the up smash fully charged, send you flying to your death, oof, shooting star. But who wanna match swords with me? I give lessons and the first one's free. I try to swing real hard and I'll pound you with a down B, clean as fuck, that's a counter. No bartender, I keep no tabs. Running on the map just to shake the grab. This isn't League of Legends and I'm no faker, but I'll stab you through with a fully charged shield breaker. But hold up, let me keep my place. I have much style, but I lose with grace. Each match is a learning experience. Win or lose, it makes no real difference. Let's acknowledge the best around. Should go toe to toe to you, pound for pound. This game might have been made for me, but we all bow down to the Smash goddess, the girl T. That's it. That's all I got. Get you back to some Smash Brothers.